existed. I was a low-income first-gen student myself from Indiana, and I was the youngest of 7, and my siblings had gone off to college, but I went off to Yale. I was not smart enough to go to U Chicago, but I had a great experience. And your children are going to have that same awesome experience. This is life-changing, both.
A demonstrated need. And a prominent study showed that high-achieving students from high-income backgrounds apply to a wide range of schools that they're potentially qualified for, including very selective schools. And
first class, we feel confident that students that we work with are gonna feel comfortable on these campuses, and each one of them has their own flavor. But it's so fun, especially at the other end of the Midwest from where we are here in Chicago, New England, and the South. So it's likely that their student will be far from home. Can you talk about support for parents and families of Quest Scholars?
Yeah, absolutely, that's a great question. So we start this relationship prior to your students actually enrolling in Denison. We loop in students to communications, parents into communications with students from really early on with the student's permission, so that you are seeing and hearing the same things that they are seeing and hearing, and you can kind of help us reinforce some messages to your students as they're coming in, not only considering applying, but eventually once they've been admitted into that transition period, right? And that transition period we see as so critical to a student's success, because if you're a match student, you're actually admitted, you're not gonna set foot on that campus for 10 months. 9 months at the very least, right? And so that's a really long period of time to know where you're going, but you still have to get there. So starting that relationship really early on with the parents, making sure that they have all of their questions answered, they know what that 9 months or 10 months are going to look like, they know what that first semester is going to look like, that's really critical for us. Our first year office will actually host individual meetings with Questbridge Scholars, and our financial aid office will do the exact same thing as well. And parents and family members are invited to those. So concerns or questions, maybe provide definitions for things that students or parents might be confused about as they're onboarding, and then same thing for financial aid, because the financial aid, while if you're a match student, everything is covered, but there are still a lot of nuances and expectations and things like that, terms that we can just further bring to light and help students and parents understand that as we go along. And then once our students are on campus, we treat them in every way like other students. So if you are involved in things like the First Gen Network or QSN, there actually are touch points in those organizations with family members and parents. We have a great parents weekend on campus every year, and students can use what we call Red Thread grants to help bring their families to campus once over their 4 years, so they can kind of experience parents weekend as well. So things like that just help make sure that you feel as connected to that community as any other parent of any other student or community. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just say I think one of the things that's really key that Drew mentioned, and I'll reinforce as well, is just continuing to engage families in communication, where I think sometimes families can feel a little unsure or unsteady about what's going on out there. The more that we can do to kind of reach out and make sure that you're looped in, not only through the kind of recruitment process and the onboarding process, but also as you sort of move through the first year and beyond of what college looks like, because at the end of the day, it's about the student, and there's of course certain things that we
provide. The Questbridge financial aid has 0 loans, and so it's a little trickier for us at this moment to provide more than the 5 or the 7 that we're doing. But we're admitting many more students later down the line, just adding in that loan component. But that still means that full financial need is going to be met. But for us, that means that our Questbridge matches typically have a 0 expected family contribution or parental contribution or family contribution. And so that if you're not admitted for the match, does not mean that you're not a competitive student for our school. It just means that we might need to admit you in regular decision later down the line to be able to provide the financial aid award that works for both of us. Going to least for Middlebury, you'll submit two key pieces. The CSS profile, which takes a long time, is very detailed. My mother cried every year having to fill out this paperwork. She said, this is worth the financial aid that you've got because this is such a hardship. So start that early, but that's where the majority of grants and the funding is going to come from. And then also the FAFSA, which you might have heard of, which would provide that Pell grant, the federal grant that provides. So once this family fills out both of those forms, then our financial aid office will calculate what we call your expected family contribution. So, or there's a new name.
Student index.
Yes, student index now. And so that's based off of your financial information. This is what we think you could afford every year to attend Middlebury or one of our other schools. So Middlebury will meet the full demonstrated needs. So everything else, so we have a cost of attendance that's almost $90,000 a year. If your family can pay $3,000, then we're going to fill in that other $87,000 with mostly grant money that students don't have to pay back, and then a small loan or a small work study component. So when we say we're meeting that full demonstrated need, that means that we're really looking at your family's financial context, what we expect you could pay, and then we're going to fill in the rest of that cost of attendance. And we will not gap you, meaning, well, it costs $90,000 to come here, but we're going to give you $20,000 and you're going to have to figure out the rest. So we won't do anything like that financially wise.
And Tim, before you go, I will just remind you all that in the
That's nice. 1, 2, oh.